first, let's just get a few facts on the table so that we have something properly to reason about. Here you see a map of the world, and it just shows, this is, I suppose, somewhat out of date. It shows the world's religions. These are just uncontroversial facts about the world's religions. I think everybody should know them. Now here's the Hagia Sophia in Istanbul. Here's some interesting facts about it. It started off as a church. Then it became a mosque, and now it's a museum. Isn't that interesting? Who knows what might happen next? It's hard to say. Here's the Vatican. Maybe in the life of your children or your grandchildren, it will become the European Museum of Roman Catholicism. Maybe Mecca will become Disney's Magic Kingdom of Allah.
Because that was really the main thrust of Dan's opening presentation. We need to have this education because young people need to learn about toxic religion. And all I'm trying to argue, and I haven't seen it really contested, is that religion is greatly blamed for things, even today, that have very little to do with religion. Oh, but what about the Israelis and the Palestinians? Oh, what about the Shia and the Sunni? What about Northern Ireland? What about in the Balkans? What about the Hindus and the Muslims in Kashmir? Okay, what about those people? Why are the Israelis and the Palestinians fighting? Are they fighting about religion? Are the Israelis saying Moses was a greater prophet? And the Palestinians, no, it was Muhammad who was the greater prophet. No, they are fighting over land. Why are the Hindus and Muslims fighting? They are fighting over Kashmir. In Northern Ireland, they were not fighting about transubstantiation or the Eucharist. They're fighting over which group gets to rule that country. They're fighting about self-determination. So I'm suggesting that one of the problems in this debate, I'm not saying that Dan is incompetent in his field, he's extremely competent. But I'm saying that in this new atheism, we have all these guys from Dawkins to Dan to others who are wandering far outside their fields where they know very little and making authoritative pronouncements about theology, about history, about Christianity. Christopher Hitchens in about 3 lines disposes of Anselm. Sam Harris, biology major, takes on Aquinas in a paragraph. I mean, this is intellectually embarrassing. And I think what it reflects is ultimately an atheist bigotry that is really not willing to take religion seriously. So my goal in this debate has not been ultimately to make the proof for the existence. I said I'm not proving anything. But I am saying that I want to suggest to you that there are serious arguments deriving from history, philosophy, and science that make the case that we should take seriously what most people from most of human history have taken seriously, and even now. So ultimately, this provincial, you may say, northeastern atheism of the academy that snickers at the whole world as being a bunch of idiots, I mean, is this the kind of elitism you want to have in the university where you don't take seriously the way other people experience the world?
Now, when we're talking about God, of course, that concept can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Since this is a Christian institution, since I know that Dinesh D'Souza is a Christian, and since we are living in a society that is Christian in its culture, I'm essentially going to talk about the Christian or the Judeo-Christian conception of God. And that's the being that I think I can claim does not exist. There may be other things in the universe people can talk about, some vague life force or whatever, which it's much more difficult to prove or disprove the existence of such a being. But of the Judeo-Christian God, I think we can be clear that that being does not exist, and the reason we can be clear about that is by looking at the world around us.
Hidden in Peter Singer's articulation of this argument is a Christian assumption. Because if you think about it, his whole argument was based upon caring. He essentially said, what about the child who gets cancer? What about the animal who suffers? The first question to ask is, if we are Darwinian primates, who cares? Why on earth would a dog care if a cat gets bitten? Why on earth would we, if our goal in life is to perpetuate our genes and promote our own self-interest, we would be relatively indifferent, particularly to the sufferings of strangers? Of course, if it's our relatives, you could say we share their genes. So I want to suggest that this presumption that we care is itself a legacy of theism, because it presumes that the other person like us has dignity. The other person like us is a creation, one may say, that has value in and of itself, that even though we don't suffer, we should nevertheless extend, if you will, empathy to this other creature. Peter Singer's been writing for years about animal rights. He's been pretty successful in winning converts. Unfortunately, all those converts are human. He hasn't been successful in getting animals to respect animal rights.
Dr. Hitson, I come from Tonga.
No,
in the
Professor
South
Hitson,
Pacific.
please.
Professor, before Christianity came, Tonga, Fiji, they have men for dinner, and in Tonga, it was a mess. My question is, let's say they didn't come to the Pacific. What do you have to offer us as an atheist? What do you have to offer us?
Well, should I ventriloquize the question? I'm not sure everybody heard it. The gentleman is from the island of Tonga, which is in the Pacific. Used to be a British Crown possession. I don't know if it still is. I'm certain that's how the Christians got there anyway, thanks to British imperialism. And he says that before the Christians came, people were freely dining off one another. This is a fair... In Fiji, yeah. I've heard the stories. It's often struck me as a tremendous problem. Why was no redemption ever sent to this island? Why did it go on? It reminds me of the question I closed by in my original statement. 98,000 years of human existence, and heaven watches with indifference. We're expected to believe 2,000 years ago intervenes by means of a human sacrifice in which all took part and which all must believe, and that's the salvation.
I think Christopher is missing the force of the argument here, which is not simply that the Christians have been negligent in carrying this universal message, but that when Christianity came to the rest of the world, it brought new values into those cultures. One time I said to my grandfather, how come we are part of a tiny Christian minority in India? And he said, 2 words. The Portuguese Inquisition, meaning that some very zealous missionaries, possibly accompanied with some bayonets, came to India and Christianized the Indians. I want to say 2 things about this, however. Even though that may have occurred at the beginning, you found in a very short time large numbers of Indians rushing to Christianity. And why? As I looked into this matter as I got a little bit older, I discovered that in the Indian caste system, you have 4 castes with the untouchables at the bottom, and if you're born an untouchable, you're finished. There's nowhere to go. You can't get out of it. Many of the people in the untouchable class were very attracted to Christianity because they saw it as affirming the idea of spiritual equality among persons. This was not immediately or even over a long time translated into complete political or social equality, but it meant something to say to somebody, you're not a nothing, you're not a dog, you are a human being, and that alone counts for a lot. What I'm trying to say, and I think what the gentleman here was trying to say, is that most of the world didn't have that. We didn't have it in Western civilization either. Christianity brought it in. Now, it imported some of it from Judaism, but Judaism was for the tribe. God instructs his chosen people. Christianity takes the idea and universalizes it. If you look at the rights that are stated in the UN Declaration of Human Rights, you notice something very interesting. You read those rights, they're universal rights? No. Virtually all of those rights are the specific legacy of Christianity. It's good that they're universalized because Christianity wanted from the beginning to universalize them. But they are not the shared rights recognized in all the cultures and practices, whether religious or non-religious, in other cultures. So I think we're seeing here from people who have experienced it. I don't care about those inquisitors who came a long time ago. I'm kind of grateful to them, although probably my ancestors would not have shared my enthusiasm. But they brought me into the orbit of Christianity and Western civilization, and the fact that I have the values that I do, the beliefs that I do, the respect for dignity, women, equality, and so on, is entirely the legacy of Christianity as it was exported, I'm sorry to say, Christopher, not by the British, but by the Portuguese. The British could have done a better job.